Okay.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the weekly pet roundup. I'm Isabel. This is Jess.
Hi.
And we, excuse me, we just jumped in on Instagram real quick. And so
We did.
sorry that we almost forgot our Facebook and YouTube friends. But I was saying that I feel like I look weird on Instagram. And it's because I took the curtains off of my window that's over here. In my office, and it's because I'm just done with all the dust. And because we're talking about springtime woes, I mean, flea and tick,
Yeah.
I feel like it's appropriate to share that, that I want to get rid of all my rugs and all of my curtains. We've already gone curtain free, other than cellular shades, like that the ones that are like they're fabric, they come down and
Yeah.
go up, and they're linen, kind of,
Oh.
so they're lighter. We have those downstairs in like the family room and in our bedrooms, and we're going to put a set in here, but they're kind of expensive, so I order them like one at a time usually.
Yeah.
But other than those, I don't want like pretty curtains. The only place we have curtains right now is in our bedroom, and I'm like, as much as I love the aesthetic of them, I'm thinking of getting rid of them. And then the rugs too, is just because of all the dust and all the dirt and all the dog hair and cat hair. It just feels like even if we get the house cleaned all the time, which we do, thankfully, we are blessed with a wonderful cleaning lady. It still feels like it never gets clean because of all these things that are holding on to all this stuff. And then Jess asked me about Kira, who is my dog, who doesn't like hardwood floors, and we have like vinyl plank. And yes, you're right. She would not be happy if we got rid of all the rugs, but we've been doing it slowly. And something I've always suspected is that it wasn't so much the texture of the floor, it was the lighting and how the shadows that it forms on the floor. And so now that she's 14 and probably doesn't see as well as she used to, I think she's not as sensitive to it anymore. Oh my gosh. I'll remove you. Let's do it again. I remove and bring you back in.
Okay.
There we go.
That's better. Yeah, I would imagine Kim would not have a very good time if I tried to remove traction.
No. So we
Um,
have traction on the stairs, which we need it for everybody, I think. And in the like hallways, we have runners. And downstairs, we still have a rug in the family room. But that rug's going to go soon.
Well, I wish her the best. I mean, ultimately, my house is a zoo, obviously. If y'all can
Is that
hear.
Kim? Is that Kim?
No, it's my brother's dog, Zoomer. My brother is doing some yard work, and so I think he doesn't like the weed eater, lawnmower. I don't know, whatever. Like, I don't know if you can hear that too, because that's
I
going
can.
on.
I can.
I have the window closed, so that's about all I can do there.
This is my fault because we were supposed to do this yesterday, and
That's
because
okay.
of my internet, we could not do it. So we will take what we can get, Jessica.
Yeah. Sadly, we will have to take what we can get, and I actually am not going to be able to do this next week, so we need to make the best. We need to make the best of this.
Of course. Well, we were going to separate flea and tick and heartworm. So we'll still do that, but we'll do the heartworm not next week, but the following week, because they are three distinct pests, and flea and tick tend to be grouped together. A lot of times the three of them get grouped together, but they work very differently in the body and they cause different threats. So we'll do flea and tick together because a lot of your preventatives are going to work well for both. Fleas, obviously, they suck your blood, and so do ticks, and so do mosquitoes, which is what causes heartworms. But mosquitoes and ticks and fleas are all different as far as like the pesticides that kill them. But fleas and ticks tend to be more similar. I think they have like the same like lung structure or something, right? Like the respiratory system's the same. So that's why the same things that work for ticks work for fleas and vice versa. So we are going to talk all about fleas and ticks. And yes, there are going to be some maybe potentially controversial statements made today.
Yeah, well, and I think this past year was particularly rough for fleas. I don't know a single part of the country, really. Like, it was all over, where people were just like, could not get rid of fleas.
Well,
And
in the desert, we don't have fleas very much. Like, I'm sure that like if you brought fleas into like a boarding facility, that they would, you know, wreak havoc or whatever. But like in my house in El Paso, in the 8 years I've been here, and I don't want to jinx myself, so where's
yeah,
that
don't.
wood? I've never seen any situations where we had a lot of fleas or ticks, actually, but we're in the desert. So they're not going to like thrive as much as they do somewhere humid.
Yeah.
But I can guarantee you that if I were to like take a road trip with my dogs and pick up some fleas and bring them back, they would colonize just fine.
Yeah. Well, especially once in your house, right? Once they're in your home.
Especially in the house.
Mm-hmm. So here's my biggest gripe about the neurotoxins that are sold, the pesticides that are sold to put, whether you're putting them topically or it's in a chew that your dog ingests. My biggest issue is that flea or that tick still has to bite your dog or cat. So when people don't understand how these products work, that's one of the comments that I get the most on social media, on any content that I post around fleas or ticks, is that it's not worth the risk to not do the chemicals. But that to me says that you don't understand how these products work. And I'm not saying that to be mean or to be judgy. I just like, it's a learning opportunity, because that flea or that tick still has to bite your animal to ingest the neurotoxins that are in the blood. So first and foremost, those neurotoxins that are in the blood, they're not just in the blood. They're not just there for the fleas and the ticks, whatever is biting your animal. They are going everywhere. They are going everywhere in the body. They cross the blood-brain barrier. We know this. We know that when you bathe your dog, they're getting in the water supply. They are destroying waterways and life in waterways. And one of the biggest concerns, okay, so first of all, fleas, you've got fleas. They're terrible. Like, we don't want fleas. And yes, when you have an animal, especially a young puppy or kitten, they can very quickly become anemic if they're infested with fleas. So that's a problem. Obviously, I'm not trying to ignore that. Ticks are another thing. That's one of the things that people have this like sticking point on tick-borne illnesses. But that tick still has to bite your dog to get the neurotoxin. So tell me how we're preventing tick-borne illnesses.
Well, we're not, because Titan got Ehrlichia while he was treated for all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So it's
luckily he didn't show any symptoms or anything. We found out when he became a blood donor, or we were trying to get him to be a blood donor, him and Socks, or I was. This was before I was single and I had time to make my dogs blood donors. And they have to do like a full test on them, obviously, before they can make them, you know, regular blood donors. And Socks was fine, but Titan actually was, they really wanted Titan's blood because he had the more unique blood type, the one that's harder to find. But they could not take him because he showed that he was positive for Ehrlichia. And like, that never resolves. That's always going to be there.
Yes.
So he could never donate blood, and Socks would go every 6 weeks and donate, and he would just stay home. Yeah, but yeah, we didn't know. We had no idea. There was no symptoms. It was just, you know, it just was. I don't know that we would have even caught it, honestly, outside of that situation.
Yeah. When we adopted Kim, she had, no symptoms, but we found on the blood test that she had Ehrlichia. So that is something that I always, every time we go in, even for veterinarians that I have worked with in the past, it's like, by the way, she is going to test positive for Ehrlichia. Like, we're not going to freak out, and we are not going to do antibiotics.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think this was a long time ago, and we did do antibiotics. But I mean, it didn't really by the time that he tested positive, we have no idea when he was exposed, but I can tell you that he was getting his monthly chew that was supposed to include all 3 pests.
Yeah.
And he was getting it on time. So
yes. Well, again, that's when we understand how these medications work, then we can actually start making better informed decisions. The vast majority of people, I have realized, don't understand how they work. Like, if you just pull somebody off the street and say, "Are you giving this to your dog? How does it work?" They're going to say, "It keeps fleas and ticks off of my dog." It does not, right? So that's the very first thing we have to understand, is that that's not how these products work. So we are not preventing tick-borne illness. We could potentially prevent anemia if, from being overrun, but there are better ways in preventing anemia, making sure that animal is healthy enough to not attract these pests in the first place, which granted is harder in puppies and kittens because their immune system is still developing. So we need other things. Personally, for me, I do my best to keep my animals as healthy as possible so their immune system can handle whatever comes their way. And I think we've talked about this before. I know I've talked about this before. We don't see healthy adult wolves, wildcats out in the wild being affected or being infested by fleas and ticks. We do see it happen. It's generally in the animals that are sick, elderly, dying, like because
malnourished.
They're not well. And so they are a much better host for these pests. So that's where we see it in the wild. And I think that's why we see it so much in our pets, because they are not healthy. I mean, an average dog or cat in the United States that their owner thinks they're fine, they're healthy, they're probably not. And that's the very first thing that I think we have to overcome.
Yeah, well, I mean, yes, the standard is low.
Very.
The standard is low, and the standard is a commercial fed food, sedentary lifestyle.
Yeah.
Very little interaction with the environment and with nature.
Mm-hmm.
The standard is
covered in toxins.
They're exposed to constant exposure to toxins. Obesity is a standard. The frequent use of pharmaceuticals is a standard. So all of those things are standard. So yeah, we don't really know what it would look like if our dogs and cats were in optimal health and not treated, right? Because there's no study that we could turn to that says this sample is the healthiest dogs. They have the best food ever. They exercise exactly according to what their breed standard would require. They do this much outdoor time, this much mental stimulation, this much blah, 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 versus this standard American diet dog and cat or whatever. We're not testing this and then exposing them to fleas and ticks, right? Because if we were, we might be really surprised by what the results are. Yeah. But who's going to pay for that study? Nobody, because obviously the people who want us to buy their flea and tick products are not going to pay for a study like that. Right. And then I bet you could run into an issue with ethics, because you can't feed these dogs this amazing fresh food diet because it doesn't meet the criteria of XYZ, and now it's not ethical to run this study. So to get real, truly take to the bank information, you would have so many hurdles that we really are, as pet parents, forced to be okay, common sense. But common sense is not common. No, and we see this for ourselves. I was a dog walker, professional dog walker in Northern Virginia where I can tell you, I used to walk my dogs and come back with ticks on my legs, on my own legs.
Mm-hmm.
But I wasn't squeezing something between my shoulder blades every month.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I was walking a lot with them. And so I would check them for ticks and I would check myself for ticks. And thankfully, we never had an issue with fleas, like ever. But we definitely struggled with ticks. And, you know, other than Titan having Ehrlichia, and like my first house with my dogs was like, it backed up to like woodlands, like 32 acres of woodlands. So like we had access to ticks more than we would have really wanted to. And never did they really have any issues with carrying a ton of ticks and things like that. We did use, at the time, I was like very much about like all whatever the vet said. And I did use that stuff, but it didn't mean we weren't bringing ticks home. They were still on their bodies, they were on my body.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I never got Lyme's disease or anything like that. But some places, I mean, it's almost like a false sense of security when you're using these, because then you think, oh, I can let it lapse. No, you can't. You can't let anything lapse. Like you can't let the diet and the exercise. You can't really let if you're using any kind of like natural topical, you have to be super, super, disciplined about using them. If you really live somewhere where you need something like that, you can't just let it lapse. Like these things live in our environment. And like in some places, you need to be worried about them, not just in spring, but every single day of the year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But we've been conditioned to think that it's like flea and tick season. And then like, there's ads for like the little thing. And now it's the solution. But really the situation's a lot deeper than that.
It is. And they're a part of the ecosystem, right? We don't want to get rid of them. And that's another thing with using these chemicals, and I talked about earlier, they're in the waterways. They're almost ubiquitous at this point because they pass through the blood-brain barrier and they're everywhere. And so when we are poisoning our waterways, when we're poisoning our soils, we are we're making the habitat that these creatures live in inhospitable. They're going to look for other places to live, maybe your home, and possibly kill them off, whether that's in a certain area or regionally, globally. Who knows, right? Like, who knows the extent of this? And that alone is really not good for the ecosystem. Like we can look at any one animal and be like, that is such a pest to us as humans. We don't want it living anymore. But the like domino effect of what happens when we mess with the like natural order of things, that can be like, look at the honeybees. I don't know what is going on with honeybees right now. I keep seeing all over TikTok, like whole hives are just dying. I don't know what is going on. This is not good for us, right? For the planet, for humans as a species, for like, this is not good for us. But I promise you, it's our fault. I can almost promise you that it's our fault. And it's kind of twofold. They're not good for our pets. They're not good for the environment. They're not doing what you think they're doing. They're not preventing fleas and ticks from latching on and biting your dogs. The whole point is that they do latch on and bite your dog, so suck up the neurotoxin and die. So again, understanding how they work is the first part of the puzzle. And then we can talk about what to do instead.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, we need to get our pets as healthy as possible. And understanding what that means is vastly different from what traditional veterinary medicine is telling us. And it's not the fault of the veterinarians. This is what they are being taught. So anything I say is not to be negative towards the veterinary profession. I think they're, generally speaking, obviously people are people, but generally speaking, really incredible humans that love animals. They're very empathetic. They just have been indoctrinated in a system that is not does not have our pet's best interest at heart. For emergency situations, absolutely. For acute things, it does have our pet's best interest at heart. It is for acute things. If my dog gets hit by a car, please, I want, my dog needs painkillers, maybe sedation, anesthesia, if we need a surgery. Like, yes, that's amazing. But for something like actual health, like taking care and the day-to-day well-being of our pets, it's not there. It's not on the human side. It's not at our doctor's offices, and on the veterinary side, it's not in their doctor's offices. So a species appropriate diet, and I'm not going to be super picky about this as much as I would love to be, as long as it is fresh food based with minimal to no synthetics. That is the goal. It can be raw, it can be gently cooked, it can be a hybrid of both. I'm good with that. But it needs to be real food. We cannot live a life on an ultra processed diet and expect to thrive. Period. End of statement. Right?
And it's a Band-Aid, right? Like at that point, it's just a Band-Aid.
Yeah.
It's a Band-Aid because we keep putting more layers of toxins and things on our pets, which are not cheap, by the way.
No, they're not.
But then we keep saving money on our dog's food or cat's food by giving them kibble because that's all we can afford. But when you start adding up all the pharmaceuticals, the nutraceuticals, the flea and tick preventative, the heartworm pill, the this and that, and the heartworm testing, because that wouldn't change. You would still need to do that, and the dental and all that. And the dentals are more often because the food's crap. And, like add up all those expenses. And then if you were able to like reduce the frequency of the dentals, and you were able to reduce the need for pharmaceuticals, nutraceuticals, things like that, maybe you can actually spend a little more money on the food. But we've been conditioned to be like, the basis is the kibble, and then we just add expenses on top of that.
Mm-hmm.
And that is just financially so dumb. And for our pets, it's so sad because what we're doing is we're feeding them Doritos every day and expecting them to thrive. Mm-hmm. And like my kids eat worse probably. My dogs eat kibble and fresh, like mixed, and that's all we can afford right now. But like I can guarantee you that I'm not making them sicker through choices that I make. Luckily, we live in the desert. So like here, I don't feel like I need to be preventative about fleas and ticks. Like if we were to go, when I go to Ruidoso Cloudcroft, which is like more wooded, I don't usually take my dogs, and definitely not my cat. And if I were, I don't know that I would like let him, like, just because of the knowledge that like there are things over there that I don't really want to bring home. And when I go to Ruidoso and Cloudcroft, it's usually to relax and not have to take care of pets. So I have a wonderful pet sitter who comes over and takes care of them for me. But for me, it's like here in the desert, I'm expected to give my pets, my dogs, flea and tick every single day of the year because it gets so hot, because we don't freeze so often. But really, when you do your research, it's not really that common of a pest here.
Yeah.
You know what you can find here? Tarantulas. And they look just like fake tarantulas you'd buy at Pottery Barn around Halloween. They're so cute and fluffy and beautiful. And that's what we find. And you know what they eat? They eat all that stuff. So like we don't really have a ton. When I lived in Louisiana, totally different situation. So my thought process in Louisiana, where it rained easily 300 days a year, I kid you not, it was misery. There, it was the perfect setting for fleas. Like our yard, I never saw a tick. Again, it wasn't super wooded. Not to say that they can't be elsewhere, but that's usually where you find them. They're deer ticks and stuff, so you'd find them where you find that kind of wildlife. Um, Northern Virginia, for example, just like so common to find them everywhere. But in Louisiana, like, yeah, we looked out for fleas, like, but we used obviously more proactive things in the moment. So like I am a big fan of Wonderside. I know that it's and Cedarside, both of them. I don't really have a loyalty to either brand, but they make it easy. Like they have like this spray that's already pre-made for you. You spray it on your pet before you go for a walk in the woods, or before you spray it on them when you come back from the walk in the woods. So then now you're like getting rid of stuff that actually could be coming home with you, and you're being preventative without being playing, like just taking risks with their health, giving them a pesticide that they may not even need. Because like, again, in my yard, my dogs walk around the neighborhood every day. I've never seen any, I barely even see like a cockroach. Like we live in the desert. Like there's just not that many things here. And so the recommendation would be for me to be like layering them up with all this stuff. Why? For 8 years, I've seen my environment and I know what risks they face, and it's not that.
Yeah. Yeah. You do have, I mean, I think that's a very good point. You need to do your research on what is actually going on in your area to know what your risk is. And regardless, in my opinion, food is crucial for so many things, not just flea and tick. It's just it's that foundation of health that we need to keep the immune system in the best shape we possibly can, so it can handle whatever is being thrown its way, including all of those toxins that are just everywhere, because you don't know what your neighbor is spraying on their yard. Because I mean, there's so many things. I mean, there's so many things we bring into our homes that I mean, I was so spoiled in my house where I had cleaned up so much, and then I come here and my brother's, and it's like I'm bombarded with all of these. I'm like, oh my Lord Jesus. So, you know, milk thistle all around. But then on top of that, we can do things. Wonderside and Cedarside are great. I also feed my dog when I was in Texas, I was feeding her fresh garlic. So I would chop.
I knew this was going to come
garlic.
up. That's the controversy I knew we were going to talk about.
I would chop fresh garlic and add that to her meals, generally 5 days a week during the season when I needed it. I would not do it in the winter because I didn't need it, or she didn't need it. Here, for ease of use, because my life is completely different right now in this very moment, I bought these springtime bug off garlic granules, and so I've been adding that to her food, because I know here in the Hampton Roads area in Virginia, it is terrible. Fleas, ticks, all of it. Mosquitoes, they're bad. Terrible.
Virginia, I love you. You're for lovers and mosquitoes and bugs, man.
Yes,
Virginia,
absolutely.
Virginia.
So, and then I am also a fan of essential oils. I will say that and that's the basis for both Wonderside and Cedarside. I have a bunch of essential oils from Animalio that I love and that I use. I have started to kind of cut back a little bit on the essential oils that I have been using after talking to Rita Hogan, who is a canine herbalist. And she absolutely believes in essential oils, but also believes that it takes so much, like they're just not sustainable the way we use them.
Got it.
So there's a huge sustainability issue, and also we really overuse them. They are so potent that they are very easily overused. Yes. So I have kind of cut back on what and how I use essential oils since talking. I still love them, don't get me wrong. And I still use them. I just, because I have them purchased. I'm just in the future going to be a lot more aware of what I purchase, because I literally would just go to the Animalio website and buy so much stuff.
Right.
So I'm just trying to be a little bit more aware.
Can you, for those who are not familiar, explain why garlic is a defense against these pests?
Yeah. So when you chop fresh garlic, there are some compounds in the garlic that are activated when you chop it fresh, and they form a new compound called allicin. And that is what, when your dog or cat ingests it, that is what is going to give those properties. It's going to kind of seep through the skin and in the natural hair oils or coat oils. That is going to be a natural deterrent for fleas and ticks.
So it's a repellent. It repels fleas and ticks like it does you and me after people eat like garlic fries and stuff.
Yep.
Like
absolutely.
garlics. In Spain, we use garlic so much. We just like chop garlic up, put it in tomatoes and put olive oil on it. And all it is just garlic. And it's like seeping out of your skin. And that's what we want. We want no mosquitoes to bite us, no people to approach us. And that's what we like about the garlic. But it's interesting because I've seen a lot, like, so you chop it. I was told to like smush it and then leave it for 20 minutes so that compound can form. Does it matter if we're like smushing it, and how much are we feeding?
Well, you're kind of doing the same thing. Whether you're
still breaking it,
you're breaking it so that those compounds can kind of mix together. And it does need to sit for about 15 to 20 minutes to form that allicin. And I know I have a blog somewhere on how much to feed. It's like, I want to say for a dog Kim size, it's like, because she's 14-ish pounds, like a quarter of a clove. It's a small amount, and then you gradually increase it based on your dog's weight up to 2 cloves, and that's kind of your cutoff.
Max. Why does garlic have such a reputation for being toxic? Straight up, not bad for, not in moderation, just completely a reputation for being completely toxic.
Because of bad science.
Because of bad science. Yeah, always.
You're like, can you please elaborate on that? Yeah, there was a
It's
study
always bad science.
Lord have mercy. I just had a podcast recording this week with Dr. Bob Ulbrich, and he is not on social media, so nobody probably knows who he is, but he's a homeopathic veterinarian. And that's one of the things we talked about was bad science. How science has become a religion. And as a scientist, your goal is to form a theory and disprove that theory. And that's not how studies are being conducted, because the people paying for the studies don't want you to conduct the studies that way. So since the 80s, it's a huge percentage, well over 50%. I want to say it's like in the 80 something percent range of studies have either been retracted or corrected. Like, it's insanity.
But we never follow up. We just take
exactly
what the result was initially and run with it forever.
Yeah. So a lot of bad science out there. And this particular study that was done, I want to say it was done in like the 70s. Don't quote me on that. But they used a garlic extract. They didn't use fresh garlic. They used a garlic extract, and they used an absurd amount. Like, you would never, what it equated to was like, I mean, I want to say it was, off the top of my head, like hundreds of bulbs of garlic. Like, you would never, there is, I cannot imagine a dog consuming this amount of garlic in a week, let alone a day. Like, it's an it would be, in my opinion, just impossible. So there's not to say that there isn't a toxic level. There's a toxic level of a lot of things. There's a toxic level of water, right? So, kind of putting things in perspective, you talked about common sense earlier, not being so common. I mean, would you even feed your dog a whole bulb of garlic? One, no, probably not. Like, that's crazy. Why?
I
Who would
wouldn't
do
feed
that?
myself that. I know that my stomach would be upset. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
think about that.
Yes.
Like, we'd be killing all the parasites in all of El Paso if I ate all that. Like, come on.
Right.
Like, everybody
I
knows that.
know. And I mean, even roasted I love roasted garlic. If I eat a whole head
Same.
of roasted garlic, my stomach is not happy with
No,
me later that day.
too much. Too much of a good thing. Exactly. No.
And I know this from experience. So
Yeah, no, we don't want to do that to anybody, not our dogs, not anybody. So it's always the devil's in the details, right? The
it is,
devil
yeah.
really is in the details, and it really is a matter of these studies or these hypotheses or these beliefs just kind of becoming black and white. Like,
Yeah.
yes, it's right. Yes, no, it's wrong. Like, it's just that. And there's no gray area. And so dosing is such an important gray area. Like, of course, like
It is.
if I were to take something that the bottle says take, it's kind of like vitamin C. Vitamin C is amazing. There's therapeutic doses, then there's just like whatever, just like maintenance doses. There's a bunch of stuff, but like everybody who does like high dose vitamin C knows that the second your stomach gets upset, you went too far and now it's time to taper off. And the good thing about vitamin C is that it likely won't hurt you. It's just going to be a real uncomfortable afternoon. But even the good stuff we know has to be done at adequate doses. And a dose for me is going to be different than a dose for an infant.
Yeah. And garlic is a really good thing. Like it helps resolve stagnation in the body. It's warming. It can help warm the body if that's what you need. It also has cancer fighting properties. Like
Infection fighting. Yeah. It's an infection fighter.
It is
Yeah.
I mean, garlic is amazing. And
I know some people make like
demonize it.
honey with the honey and garlic, and they just take like a spoonful during flu season and they swear
Yeah.
by it. I mean, these things are, they're not made in a lab with a guy in a white coat, but they're still very powerful healing modalities or ingredients. And I feel like when it comes to fleas and ticks, like we're so scared of the idea of like our dog bringing in like one or two, or our dog getting Lyme's disease, or our dog like being infested with fleas. But the reality is the majority of people aren't going to have that experience. I have a cousin who lived in Washington State. Yeah, very humid, very very hospitable environment for fleas, and she tried everything and could not get them under control, and it was a nightmare. So I get it that nobody wants to take a risk on this. But as a mom, I have to remind you that like that toxin that you're putting between your dog's shoulder blades is also ending up on your child, on you, when you pet them in your bed.
Yeah.
Obviously in our waterways, but some people don't care about that. Some people just care about their four walls. Well, it's in your house. It's on your couch. They say don't touch it. They say like wash your hands after, but like it's still wet there. What do you think? It's not getting anywhere? Like it's that pesticide's getting everywhere. And so for people with young children, I always worry about that. Like that's not really healthy. If you know anything about kids, you know that they barely wash their hands. So now your kid's touching that. And so there has to be a better way that actually does maybe layers of a better way that give us the same peace of mind that as those pharmaceuticals, but aren't putting us and the pet at risk as much. So going back to garlic, going back to the topicals that are actually like essential oil based, then there's what is it? Diatomaceous
earth.
Diatomaceous earth.
Yeah.
That's an interesting conversation. That's a really cool powder. It's powder. And like now I just read something somewhere where like people were trying to make like diatomaceous. What is it? I can never say it. DE is what I call it. I call it DE. So we'll just call it DE, but DE shampoos. But the reality is that in order for it to work well, it has to be in powder form.
Mm-hmm.
That one also, you don't want to breathe in. So you don't want to do this next to your toddler. You don't want your toddler helping you. You need to put it outside where there's like a little bit of airflow and, sprinkle them with it. There are obviously the sprays like Wondercide, Cedarside. There is the food additive Bug Off that is actually, if you're interested, it's on Dr. Judy Morgan's website. This is not sponsored, but it is $52.99 for 4 ounces, and it's safe for dogs and cats. DE is also safe for humans. Like you can put it in your yard. Like you can put it in your yard and, keep your yard safe.
There's also beneficial nematodes that you can use in your yard.
And there are sprays too for your yard. Like Wondercide has a yard spray. We did that for a long time. Obviously it works better in the desert than it does elsewhere because once it rains, it kind of washes off. So you want to do that. You want to be conscious of that because it does get expensive and time consuming if you're doing it every 2 weeks. But there are so many options that people are not aware of. Flea and tick shampoos and conditioners that kind of like natural based, that are essential oil based, that could leave a little bit of something so that every month it's a layer. It's a layer that is helpful.
Yep, absolutely. And like amber collars, some people swear by amber collars. There's and another thing to really be aware of, especially with the chemicals, the neurotoxins. They tell you right on the packaging, do not use these on animals that are prone to seizure activity. They are known to cause seizure activity. They're known to cause lots of, from nausea all the way up through death. So this isn't something that's like, we'll just keep using it because, it can't be that bad. It can be that bad. And I hope it is not that bad. I hope with all my heart, if you're using them, that it's not that bad for your animal.
Well, my friend Brooke just showed up. She's on Facebook. Hi, Brooke. How are you?
Hi.
Brooke is actually a professional pet sitter. She has a professional pet sitting business in the Houston area, in Katy specifically. And she does a blog every week, and she just covered the idea of like really taking care of your yard. If your yard is a concern, making sure you don't have like the decaying branches and tree stumps and the rotting wood and all that stuff, because that's going to attract all the pests to your yard. They're going to bring all the boys to the yard, right? So that is something that, like, as we're talking about layers, that is a really big layer. My backyard, yes, we have grass. Yes, we have trees. We have rocks, and that's it. We don't have like a stack of firewood. We don't have like, whatever we chopped up that we forgot to like take care of. We don't have we do, as much as I know that leaves are part of the ecosystem and they're fine to go back, we actually do remove our leaves when our tree, because we have dogs and we don't want like people walking on poop and leaves and you can't tell what's under there. So we do remove our leaves. So our grass is pretty much just grass. There's so much sun here that things don't stay damp very much. So for me, starting with your yard, avoiding places that have all that debris on walks, like I have a hiking trail right up the street from my house. And for reasons beyond my dogs, also for safety for me, like I don't like going by myself into those trails. But if I were to take my dogs in those trails, I'll spray them with Wondercide before we go and after we get back. But during the day, like when I walk them normally, I just stay on the sidewalk. And if I see like some dying tree or some, messy yard that nobody's kept, I just like go around it. I avoid it, right? Because we can do things that are really like normal and smart and like not a big deal, and those still contribute immensely to keeping our pets safe from these pests. Like we don't have to go and like spend a fortune at the vet as our only option. And even if your pet is on all of these things from the vet, like Jessica said, they can still be bitten by these pests. So what you want to do is be proactive anyway. Add these layers. Instead of spending on the flea and tick medication that goes between the shoulder blades, maybe you add the garlic. Maybe you add some holistic natural ingredient. See how that goes. If you're in a particular place, like one of my clients lives in the Connecticut shoreline, where literally Lyme's disease started.
Oh, goodness.
There's an East Lyme, there's a North Lyme, I think, Lyme.
Yeah.
And the first case of Lyme's disease was there. So obviously she is going to be a lot more vigilant about fleas and ticks than I am living in the desert, where like
Yeah.
it just doesn't happen as often. There are I know for heartworm, which we're talking about not next week, but the week after, there are maps online that show you. And for ticks as well, there are maps. I don't know about fleas. I've never looked for that. But I think you can be pretty sure that like fleas and ticks kind of like live in like similar environments. So if you see that your area is really, really dangerous for ticks, you and your family and your pets have to be layering the protection. That little squirt in the back once a month is probably not enough. Take it from somebody who was using that, and my dog got Ehrlichia. Like, you need to take more precautions than just
exactly that. Because it's not preventing ticks from biting your dog, which is why they can still get Ehrlichia and Lyme, and I don't remember what the other ones are, but I know there are a number of tick-borne illnesses that are really, really nasty for both pets and people. Like,
yeah,
this
it's not just about the pets. Exactly.
Right.
We talk about it like it only affects like tick-borne diseases only affect pets. Like,
right. No,
one of my biggest fears, I remember we went to Taos, New Mexico, which is gorgeous, like ski area, but it was the summer. And we stayed at this Airbnb and it was beautiful. But let me tell you, that place was so overgrown. The house itself was gorgeous. Like southwestern beautiful home. It was a bunch of us. So it was a big house, but around it had not been kept at all. Like, everything was just growing wild. They had a hot tub. I couldn't even see the hot tub with all the growth, right?
Oh my gosh.
There were bugs in the house.
Of course.
And my baby was like 1. Mila was like 1. And I was petrified that one of us was going to end up getting some kind of tick-borne disease. And my mom, my sister, my husband, everybody was like, why? I'm like, because it's not just dangerous for the animals.
Yeah.
Like, it's dangerous for all of us. Just coming in and out, we can get a tick bite, and all it takes is one bite, right? Like, and again, we're not that healthy. And my daughter is 1 year old, so she doesn't have the immune system to like fight this off. And so we always obsess over, and then we say, well, who's hiking with the dog? Are you hiking with the dog? Are you taking any precautions? Because the dog has whatever you squirted on them, but how about you? And like, just because they're furrier doesn't mean that you're not going to pick one up and it's not going to find its way to a dark corner on your body.
Absolutely.
Like, those things find their way.
Fall from a tree. Like, it's
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And just to kind of round this out, because I've got to jump off for another call, but regardless of what you're doing, we live in a toxic world, but especially if you're doing those chemical flea and tick, topical or oral, please, please, please be doing liver support so that your dog can process it as easily as possible, or cat, or you, whoever. Like, please take care of their liver. Please, please.
Yeah, so we talked about liver support. Was it last week when we did allergies?
It was. Yeah.
So we talked about liver support last week when we did allergies. But also, I wanted to round the conversation out for our cat friends. Garlic, cats, yay or nay, dosage.
It's like an eighth. It's like an eighth of a clove. Yeah.
And how do cats like it? Because I've never tried. I give garlic to my dogs. Because Van Gogh doesn't really go outside, so I have not really done much. But I have never done it. Would he eat it?
Possibly, if you hide it in the food well enough.
Okay.
If not, you could put it in a little bit of ghee, maybe. And
ooh, that sounds delicious. Garlic bread.
Right?
Okay. We're sharing bangies.
Aw. Yeah. Yeah, it is fine for cats in tiny little amounts like that.
And
Absolutely.
always, again, like the takeaway is always, instead of layering pharmaceuticals and things like that, which obviously at some point they are absolutely necessary and life-saving. So this is not an anti-pharmaceutical or anti-medical conversation, but instead of layering preventative stuff from your veterinarian, look at the food, look at the quality of the food that you're feeding, do the math, budget, like look at it. Nobody can prove it to you better than the math can. When you add up all your expenses for the year at your vet versus what it would cost to feed a higher quality food, give it a shot, see what happens. Because like at our house, we barely see the vet. Actually, Radar, I was calling Radar. Satchmo just got back from the vet getting his teeth cleaned because that man needed it. That boy needed his teeth cleaned.
Yeah.
And I know that has to do with how long he was on kibble only, living with my sister, which no hate to my sister. No, a lot of people feed kibble. I still feed 50% kibble. So it's not like we think anything less of you. It's just, Kira didn't need it.
Yeah. Yeah.
They both went to the vet. Only one of them needed it. And Kira's older. And Kira hasn't had it in a minute. And, she's 14. And if she needed it, we would have done it. But he desperately needed it. And I wouldn't be surprised if we had extractions as a result. So the diet touches everything, not just the fleas and ticks, not just the teeth. It just works all over the bodies. So
absolutely.
Thank you guys for joining us. We won't see you next week, but we will see you the following week for the weekly pet roundup. And then this week, tomorrow, I am interviewing a wonderful cat lady who you might know her cats. I will share all the details. I met her at the CFA Cat Expo last year. And so she's going to be my guest, and she has Maine Coons. So we're going to talk a lot about Maine Coons, read and learn about how she ended up with a Maine Coon as not somebody who was always a cat person. So I think her handle is Peak. Oh my God. I don't want to make you stay longer, but it's I'll put it in comments. It's
okay.
Peak Adventure and Travel Cat. Her name's Caitlin. Peak is, well, she has two, but Peak is like a cat named Peak. That's what it was. So a cat named Peak is the social media handles, and you can see her cats there. Peak and his brother were actually at the CFA Expo. So they're creators. They're super fun, and we'll learn all about Maine Coons tomorrow.
Oh, I love that. I love that. All right, guys, have a fabulous rest of your week, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Bye.
Bye.